Christians scattered across our region, and you make a comparison to the number of organizations, churches that are engaging intentionally in sending missionaries, you would realize that there is so much more that we can do. And as I listen to these conversations, these two things come to my mind because I think if we are going to be able as a region to take this whole gospel, as a whole Caribbean church to the whole world, that these are two narratives that need to be completely eradicated from our part of the world. Firstly, we need to ensure that our ministry to the Caribbean involves deep level Christ centered disciple making. And I see this as a youth because I think that naturally young people currently desire the type of vulnerability, the type of relationship, the type of authenticity that should be existent in a discipleship relationship, a discipleship structure, and it becomes a major vehicle, a major tool for the advancement of the gospel in the region, so that we are missionaries first and foremost to ourselves. And I think once we're able to find effective ways to engage young people who already have or share some of the values that disciple making is designed to achieve, I think that's one way that we can really um, advance the action, advance the engagement that we're looking for. And then on the second level, we don't only think about ministry to the Caribbean, but also how do we involve or how do we encourage and challenge the Caribbean church not just to send but to also fund missions. So I heard a quote a few years ago. They say you're either a missionary or you are a mission field. Everybody is either in need of the gospel or should be a carrier, a mover, a sender, a goer for the gospel. And I think if it is that we as the Caribbean are going to play the role that I believe God has cut out for us to play in global mission, that it is going to be important that we begin to change the mindset, change the narrative um, across the board, that we are no longer just a mission field. We are no longer just those who should be dependent, who should be just waiting on somebody to come and do for us. But because of the gospel in our part of the world, because of the maturity and the leadership that we have, which is again evident on the call here, that there is something significant, something unique that we can offer to the world as well. That there may be global issues, there may be global problems that are looking for solutions, and the Caribbean voice can contribute to solving some of those problems through the gospel. If I could give one quick example, I always think about refugee camps, and I always consider like which world area, which people group could serve refugee camps at the Caribbean, with a history of being displaced, a history of having to learn how to thrive in the midst of struggle. There are issues in the world that I believe if the Caribbean church is challenged and come on board with what God is doing, that we can play a significant role in helping to solve some issues, but also contribute to the further advancement of the gospel to the ends of the earth. So as I listen to everything, those are the two things that are on my mind. How do we get our young people more engaged in disciple making structures where the type of vulnerability and authenticity that we naturally crave and love is present, and we can clearly model, we can clearly teach what it means to be a Christ-like disciple, inclusive of both how we live and how we act, how we behave. And secondly, what must be done to mobilize the Caribbean church to move past just being a mission field and receiving missionaries, but also being a mission force. And being a mission force doesn't just include sending missionaries or having people raise their hands and say, yes, I want to be a missionary. It also includes supporting and mobilizing resources to fund and to support those who we would identify who want to go. And like disciple making, young people today are very interested in the adventure, very interested in getting out there and looking for a deep sense of meaning, and the mission field definitely creates that space. So that would be my perspective, eradicating those two narratives that we don't do discipleship and we are just a mission field. And I think what we are doing here is well on the way of solving those tools in our region. So that would be my response to what has been shared.
Thank you very much, Dario, for for that quick and insightful response. And changing mindset is something that we really need to do in this area in terms of how we view missions, how we view young people. So, thank you for sharing that, and that's something again that we really look forward to exploring in Guyana next year. Just even broadening our mindsets, as you were saying about the fact that we have capability to help in things like refugee camps. I mean, that's really a new paradigm as well. So thank you very much for that. I'm just checking to see if Mr. Krell is here yet. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Right. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention so far. We've now come to the question and answer session, and I will read your questions in the order that they're appeared in the chat, and I'll ask the speakers to respond. Okay, so while I wait for those to come through, I have a question for Dario Richards. And it may be something that you know or don't know, but just look forward to the response that comes to top of mind. How has the move to online church during the pandemic impacted youth?
You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes, I think that it definitely had an impact. Um, the Before the pandemic, young people as youth, we were always, or many of us were promoting and encouraging our churches, our leaders to get online, to utilize the online tools. But I think when everything was forced to be online, many of my peers mentioned to me, yes, they love the online access, the easy engagement, but it robs for sure. It takes away completely from the human interaction and engagement. And I think for many young people, that even though it doesn't look like it, that we crave authentic relationship, we crave authentic connection. So I want to share the quote. It goes like this: "When we created the ship, we created the shipwreck." And they spoke of technology. There are significant opportunities, significant blessings that came with it, but then sometimes you can have a shipwreck. And being forced to always be online wasn't the best for many young people. They wanted authentic relationship and connection. So both positives, but I think in some cases more negative impacts for some youth. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much for that. It's very interesting. So we have a question for Dr. George. Dear Sam, thank you for introducing this idea of God on the move. You mentioned that we are moving to incarnation and salvation. To many, these concepts appear to be ethereal, but aren't there material aspects to our faith and where it ends? John in Revelation says our hope, where the move ends, is material. There is a new community, righteous government that will be set up, etc. Is this a reasonable statement to say to the people to whom we share the gospel that heaven is material in nature? Sam, were you
Um,
able to get
yeah,
that?
I think
Great.
I am only suggesting the idea that look at both the understanding of incarnation and also salvation in motile terms. There is a materiality. It is not merely, I believe, we are the physicality. We'll recognize each other. We will see each other in the life beyond the grave. Heaven is real. All of that is an important element. I hope. But we understand Jesus is not a myth. He came into the world. He lived in a particular geographical, cultural context under oppression, under the reign of Rome and imperial understanding. And so that helps us. He grew up in Galilee, not in Jerusalem. And so we understand the current brokenness and oppression, exploitation that is happening in the world. Jesus' incarnation helps us to understand that and how we dealt with that. But Euro American center, resource based, power structure based, Christendom understanding of Christianity has kept Christianity's inner power to unleash over oppressive structures and made it very, very territorial and nationalized and Christiany. And in a post-colonial reading, we need to understand, the mission, the language of mission itself has baggages, and it has colonial baggages. So it is like we're beginning to read mission literature and mission history with fresh eyes, rising out of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And so I'm saying that we need to see and understand ecclesiology, missiology, eschatology, all of those in motion terms, not a very static terms. And so that's all I'm kind of advocating. I do believe in a materiality and the future and reality. It is not a philosophy. Christianity is not just a mere philosophy, or a Jesus is not just a mythical character, like in Hinduism or Buddhism that doesn't have any claim to God. Buddha never claimed to be God, but Jesus said, "I am that I am. I existed before David," and understanding of triune nature of God and Trinity we understand through motion. And Trinitarian theologians, without going deep into theology, we understand motion within Godhead. Perichoretic dance. How can we think of dance of Trinity without motion? And so motion is essential to understanding
So,
Trinitarian God. God enters into the world, and that again is motion. Movement is essential to understand. And then finally, we are transported into a new reality. Again, we have to understand through displacement and motion.
great. Thank you very much for a comprehensive response to that question. And just to clarify for everyone who may not have joined us right at the beginning, this is a launch event for the Missions Conference to be hosted by Lausanne Caribbean, which will be held in July next year in Guyana. And some of the issues that have been discussed by the panelists are things that we are going to be discussing in Guyana. And what we come up with in Guyana as opportunities or gaps in Caribbean mission will feed into the Lausanne Global Congress, which will take place the following year in 2024. So I hope that's a bit clearer for people who may have come in a bit later. So a third question, or not sure what number we are at now, but another question. This is a tremendous conversation today. I am aware there are a number of initiatives towards Caribbean transformation. How can we ensure that there is common platform that creates a joint network of all the efforts of the Caribbean Church. Will they all be present at the Guyana meeting next year? And I think this is a question for Dr. Newman. Dr. Newman, would you mind addressing that, please?
Most certainly, and I thank you for the question. You heard from Dr. Michael O. and from our moderator at the very beginning, if you were here at the beginning, emphasizing the word together, together. We also have emphasized the word collaboration. What, of course, our theme is about the whole church, that is the whole Caribbean church, taking the whole gospel to the whole world and to the whole Caribbean. So, certainly in the planning for the conference in Guyana, we want to emphasize these words to ensure that the invitation um, goes to a wide cross section of the church in the Caribbean. We want as many of you who would be so mindful to come and join us in Guyana from the 5th to the 7th of July in 2023. And the invitations will go out shortly. This will be at a lovely location in Georgetown. And the planning is being advanced right now. And so the invitations are going to go out. And we really hope that as many of you as possible will be able to come and join us. We have space, we have capacity for you. And when we say together, we're talking about the French Caribbean. So thank you for all our French neighbors who have joined us on this call. If the Dutch Caribbean is here on the call, you are also invited. Welcome. The Spanish Caribbean, you're also very, very welcome. We're talking about Caribbean integration at certain levels across the region. We want to make sure, as far as the church is concerned, this becomes a reality. Caribbean transformation must take place at all levels. As a region, we've been around, as I said, for 500 years. And of course, the modern Caribbean in the last 200 years, and of course, with our independence movements and so on, we have come into a whole new reality. The Caribbean reality is not just CARICOM. It transcends CARICOM. It includes CARICOM, the CARICOM countries, but we're talking about the whole Caribbean. And so it's an open invitation to you. Please look out for it. As you've been invited to this webinar, we also want to invite you to the conference that we have in Georgetown, Guyana next July.
Thanks very much, Dr. Newman, for that. I have a question for Dr. Thompson. You did mention that there is the grouping of 80 UWA graduates who have been dispersed around the world who are getting together. But are there any specific associations between scholars and professionals of the Caribbean and USA who are maybe not diaspora persons, but maybe American persons or persons from other countries living in America? Are there any associations there with regard to global missions?
Good question. They're informal associations. So, like InterVarsity USA has been partnering with CariFest, the Caribbean Fellowship of Evangelical Students, for several years. In 2016, I believe, we had a Caribbean consultation on graduate and faculty ministry that saw Black scholars and professionals from the US join with Black scholars and faculty and grad students and alums from the Caribbean in Tobago. And those collaborations have continued. We have worked with GAFES, the Ghana Fellowship of Evangelical Students, this past year, and have been working with Black students and faculty in the UK and in Ireland this past year as well. And so it's beginning to move. And so we welcome any interest. And if there are those of us who would like to further that kind of collaboration in a more formal way, we are absolutely open.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. That's interesting. Thank you. And another question, which I'm going to put to Dario Richards because he spoke a bit about this. The questioner wants to know why the theme of this seminar stops at the whole Caribbean and doesn't go as far as the whole world when regions beyond our region are open, accessible to us, and are actually calling out to us for help. These days, it is the whole church to the whole world with the whole gospel. I wonder if Dario, if you would be happy to respond to that.
Yeah, sure. Well, the theme, Lausanne's theme, what is driving Lausanne's gathering is exactly that: the whole church, taking the whole gospel to the whole world. What we are doing here with this webinar, and then onto the gathering in Guyana next July, is that we understand that the Caribbean is inclusive in this whole world, and we are wrestling with what does it look like? What does the Caribbean's contribution to this whole world moving looks like? So we are not removing the rest of the world. That is actually the general emphasis of Lausanne as a global movement. That is what we are committed to as well. The whole church taking the whole gospel to the whole world, but we're taking some time just to wrestle with how do we mobilize the whole Caribbean to get behind this. So yes, we haven't missed the whole world. It's just that we are emphasizing or focusing on what is our contribution right now. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Dario. I'm just wondering if Dr. O is here. Dr. O, are you still with us? Okay, perhaps not. Dr. George, we speak about the diaspora and global missions. Is there any work being done to reach the movement of people as tourists, specifically as tourists? Dr. George?
Yes, technically, Lausanne diaspora migration scholars do not include tourist as a category, but it is
Okay.
largely displacement out of their homeland on a more permanent or employment or other conditions in which they are displaced. And so tourists are temporary, displaced for pleasure, but there are places like, Caribbeans, which is a tourist destination, which continues to receive large number of people during winter days up in the northern continents. And I think and colonial links to Dutch and French and English. And so there's a
Which
large
that,
number of
yeah.
people who come back to their
Okay.
homelands, ancestral homeland. They do come there.
Okay.
So those kind of things, they are, church in the Caribbeans, church in the Middle East, and tourist locations in Hawaii has been very very responsive to kind of seasonal visitors and tourist people who come to their land, but they are not considered technically a diaspora.
You very much for explaining that. So I've often thought that in the Caribbean, our tourists are it's a mission, it's a missing mission field that we have. So thanks for explaining that. We're glad to welcome Mr. Krell. I'll just take one more question. Welcome. I'll just take one more question and then Mr. Krell will come to you. Okay? All right. So this is a question to Dr. Las Newman. From my French Caribbean experience, I've remarked a mature global reach in the English-speaking education community, since pupils in my primary schools are reached as high school and university students. What is the next frontier to CariFest? Did you understand? understand the question, or should I read it again?
Yeah, please
One more time.
read
Yeah,
it again.
Okay,
one more time.
okay. Right, okay. So, from my French Caribbean experience, I have seen perhaps a mature global reach in the English speaking education community, since pupils in primary schools have reached or gone to high school and university students. So I think the question is about looking at students who have gone from high school to university as they mature and as they go to different parts of the world. And we're looking specifically at the French Caribbean. They want to know what is the next frontier for CariFest.
Right. Well, thank you. There's sort of two sides to that question, and maybe the question will be better be directed to the CARIFES regional secretary, where is Mr. Mark Pulvar in Martinique. And Mark would understand the question about the next frontier of CARIFES. He could speak to that. But let me just say this about the background to the question. Um, Certainly in the English speaking Caribbean, the English education system has been very well integrated over centuries, over the last 2 centuries, integrated from the primary to the secondary to the tertiary level. And so if you work among students, you get the opportunity of seeing their life and growth and development over a longer period of time. In the French Caribbean, they have a different educational system, a different educational model. And Mark could tell you what the realities are and what the challenges are in Haiti, in terms of French education system in Haiti, or in Martinique, Guadeloupe, or French Guyana. But what I found in my experience of my travels across the French Caribbean is that certainly at the secondary level, the school and to some extent a little bit at the tertiary level in the French Caribbean, the students are vibrant, they're enthusiastic, they are part of the French Enlightenment, and they have very profound questions in terms of their commitment and long-term relationship, like the English Caribbean and the rest of the Caribbean. The French Caribbean is very much part of a diaspora community. Lots of French Caribbean folk are in Paris and in Quebec, and so they leave the Caribbean and they move on higher education, and they go to other francophone areas of the world for education as well as for employment opportunities and so on. And whether you're able to trace and track their Christian journey is something I think Mark could tell us about. It remains, from as far as I could tell, a bit of a challenge in terms of the next frontier. I don't know what that is for the French Caribbean, but for all of us in the region, whether it's the French Caribbean or it's the English Caribbean or for that matter the Dutch Caribbean, a lot of whom are in the Netherlands. A lot of the people from Aruba, Curacao, and Suriname can be found in the Dutch world, and primarily in the Netherlands. But one of the wonderful things about Caribbean diaspora, which I'm so glad we're talking about in this webinar, Caribbean diaspora, the people from the Caribbean are to be found everywhere. I just read a remarkable story on Caribbean Airlines about a Surinamese who was one of the top chefs in the Netherlands. He went with his family, migrated, lived in the Netherlands, became a chef there. But somehow he links back to his early years in Suriname and is revitalizing the way in which the Dutch approach cuisine and and experimenting with their food culture in that area. This is a contribution of the Dutch Caribbean to in a diaspora to um, to Europe, and it happens also in the French area. And it happens also in the English area. So diaspora, something vital. When we talk about the Caribbean, We have to talk about those who live here in the region, in the geographical region, but also those who live out of the region elsewhere, but who are connected with us, either by their history and lineage and so on, but also by their own cultural formation and the way they see themselves and the way they apply themselves in their new diaspora homeland. So it's a good question, and I wish Brother Mark Puvar would have been on this platform to speak that. But you can find Mark and ask him that question: what's the next frontier for Francophone Caribbean in mission?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Newman, for that response. I'm very pleased that Jerry Carell has been able to join us now. As I mentioned earlier, he had a prior appointment and it may have gone over. So we will take a pause from the question and answers at this moment. We will hear Mr. Carell's presentation as a panel member. And then if there are any other questions left after that, we will either take them from the chat, or if you would like to raise your hand in the Zoom platform, we will unmute your mic and you'll be able to ask your comment then. So once again, we will take a pause in the question and answer time. We will allow Mr. Carell to grace us with his presentation. And then afterwards, we will go to a few more questions. So it is my pleasure, and I'm really happy that he was able to come to introduce Mr. Krell. He is a catalyst for Cities for the Lausanne movement, and he is co-leader of the Nehemiah mobilization team. He is changing 512 City Church in Austin, Texas, by reimagining a church that is high-tech, high-touch. He also leads Next Move Global, a gathering of global leaders to help catalyze a turnaround in the trajectory of Christianity in the next generation. Over his career, he has served as pastor for teaching. He has led a multi-site mega church in Pretoria, South Africa. He's organized a city gospel movement across Africa, helped plant churches in Europe, and served as a dean of a seminary in Cape Town, South Africa. Mr. Krell, I now invite you to make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for that very warm welcome. Normally when I speak on online conferences, I'm grateful that I didn't have to make the flight to speak there. The beauty is that this is one online conference that I'm disappointed that I didn't get to make the flight to be with all of you. I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and I'm just so excited when Les Newman invited me to participate in this conversation. I was greatly excited in my heart because I'm so passionate about the people that I meet from the region. I was listening to some of the other panelists remark on the diaspora and how people from the Caribbean is all over the world. Well, I want to tell you, as I meet people from the Caribbean all over the world, I'm excited about their passion. I'm excited about their love for God and their desire to make a great big difference for Him. So I'm really excited about this conversation in your context and also the global implications thereof. I'm grateful to be working with the Lausanne movement in catalyzing action teams and working with the next generation and really mobilizing them. And I get to form part of a community that was briefly referenced called the Next Move. And what I'll actually do is I'll pull up my screen here if I manage. Let's see if that works. And you guys can tell me if you can see that. But I'm part of this community called the Next Move, which is a community of leaders from around the world together working to turning around the trajectory of Christianity in the next generation. And I think one of my core passions in life and something that I'd love to explore within in your context of the world is this next generation decline in Christianity that we're seeing all around the world, where we're seeing a generation of young people step away from the faith and actually step away from following Jesus, and we're seeing this next generation decline. Even though churches are growing, they're not necessarily growing younger. And I believe that globally, we're in a time where we're facing this idea of a church that is losing a generation. I'm one of those people. I'm sure you've met some pastors that are there to comfort the conflicted, and they go about comforting the conflicted. Unfortunately, I've been called to conflict the comforted, and I think we're in a time where the global church, where global missions needs to wake up to the cry of a next generation that doesn't know God. The Bible is full of verses that makes us sleep well at night. They cause us to feel better, right? The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. Or Jeremiah, call to the Lord, and He will answer you. Or even Isaiah, I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. But I also believe there's some verses in the Bible that's not there to make us sleep well at night. They're actually there to keep us up at night. And one of my favorite or least favorite verses like that is found in Judges chapter 2, verse 10, which says that when all of that generation had been gathered to their fathers, another generation arose after them who did not know the Lord nor the work that had done. There's a generation now that is walking our walk. And my question to you is, what's happening to the generation next? And will they know God and the great things that He's doing? I'm excited to have this conversation with you and to answer any questions you might have with regards to this. But it's been an incredible journey for us to see God come together and to see God really in an incredible way reach people and reach a next generation with the great story of the gospel. So really excited to be with you today and to be able to share a little bit and answer some questions with regards to engaging the next generation in the Caribbean context.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Jury. That was very, very quick and interesting. I like that phrase, conflict the comforted. Um, we do need to have some conflict to shake us up a bit. And we really appreciate your passion for Caribbean people. Thank you very much for that. So we will take a few more questions. I have one question that I will read, and if our technicians could see if there are any hands raised and just unmute and let persons ask questions. So the questions I have is, in redefining missions in the Caribbean, what is the focus for Haiti? In redefining missions in the Caribbean, what is the focus for Haiti? And I would just throw it open to any of the panelists if you would like to answer that.
Well, what is the focus for Haiti? Well, Haiti is always on our hearts and prayers. It's a special area for the Caribbean. When I travel to Haiti, I in the past usually see hope. In the present time, hope is in very short supply. Haiti is in a very, very difficult place as a nation. The people are suffering, and the country is under the control of forces that are not well intentioned. But we do have people there. We do have churches there. We do have wonderful people in Haiti that are trying to shine a light in a dark moment in Haiti's current history. One of our colleagues um, is in Cape Haitian, and we're getting regular reports out of what is happening there. We are also intending to invite a Haitian pastor, a dynamic Haitian pastor, to be a speaker in Georgetown when we meet next July. And God willing, we continue to pray for his safety, for his survival, because the rate of kidnapping and torture and deprivation in the midst of pandemics of all kinds, including cholera it's just almost overwhelming. And as we know, Haitians have sought all kinds of ways and means of living. There are several Haitians who have made their way into Guyana. There's almost a growing Haitian community in Guyana as we speak. They're all the way down in South America, all the way down to Chile and Argentina. They've been just trying to find ways to just get out and get to a place of safety and well-being. So, what is our focus for Haiti? Haiti is certainly, as a Caribbean community, in the center of our thoughts and prayers, and we want to find any way possible to help the Haitian church, the Haitian people, and serve them. So, thanks for raising that question, and it will be certainly on our agenda when we meet in July, as it has been day by day, moment by moment, as we get frequent reports about the conditions currently across the country of Haiti.
Yes, thank you very much for raising that question. Haiti is definitely in our hearts and in our prayers. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to end the question and answer session now. Thank you very much for your engagement, and we look forward to furthering these ideas and thoughts and concerns at the conference next year. Dr. O mentioned in his talk earlier about the Lausanne Movement's 4th Global Congress, and we will shortly watch a video on the lead up to that Congress. You may have seen it at the very beginning of the webinar. The Caribbean Missions Conference in Guyana next year is a lead up to that Congress. The Caribbean Missions Conference will be held from Wednesday, the 5th of July to Friday, the 7th of July next year. The purpose of the conference, you would have heard it throughout the webinar, but the purpose of the conference is to gather persons from the Caribbean to examine the region's response to 5 questions that were posed at what Lausanne calls listening calls. These listening calls were held in 2020 and 2021. The aim of the Caribbean Conference is to delve deeper into identifying the key priority action points that came out from these regional listening calls and define the key ministry response plans. So the outcomes from that conference, the opportunities and the gaps in Caribbean mission will feed into Lausanne Movement's 4th Global Conference, which will be held in Seoul, Korea the following year, September 21st to 28th. At the Korean Congress, all the input from the regional conferences held in 2023 will be put together as a response to the challenge of taking the whole gospel to the whole world. Now let's hear a video snippet from Dr. O about the lead up to this global congress in 2024. Okay, the video, it's coming.
Greetings from Seoul, South Korea, the home of the 4th Lausanne Congress to be held in September 2024. Now, one impact that you can see of Korean culture almost anywhere around the world in front of the Eiffel Tower and more is the heart. The heart when people take pictures. And I want to tell you about the heart of the Lausanne movement as well as more about the 4th Lausanne Congress in Seoul. So I'm going to do that by telling you about the heart. 4, 3, 2, and 1. So the heart of the Lausanne movement is accelerating global mission together. And we do that by connecting influencers like you and ideas at events all around the world towards a fourfold vision. The gospel for every person. Disciple-making churches for every people and place. Christ-like leaders for every church and sector, and kingdom impact in every sphere of society. So that's the fourfold vision. And at Soul, we'll have 3 gifts, 3 documents. And this is going to be some of the core resource of the Soul 2024 process, which is starting with the global report on the state of the Great Commission. This will be our marching orders for understanding all around the world where are the greatest gaps, where are the greatest opportunities toward the fulfillment of the Great Commission. Secondly, something that we may call the soul statement, and this will be both a theological as well as a strategic statement that helps us to understand in our realities today as well as our future how it is that we need to be thinking about God and His world. And then thirdly, something called the Nehemiah Challenge. And that really is a call to action, a call to specifically and purposefully commit to global collaborative action in response to the global report on the state of the Great Commission. So Soul ultimately is about action. So 3 documents, 2 spaces. What are those 2 spaces? Soul 2024 in person, as well as Soul virtual. So we're excited to see how we can utilize global digital technology to bring people from all across the world and every nation on earth together to really think about how it is that we can accelerate global mission together. And then finally, one, and that is one digital platform. And we're thankful for all of the advances in technology and artificial intelligence. And we're excited to see how we can utilize and steward a digital platform to help bring about resourcing, modeling, and connections that can help facilitate global collaboration in response to what it is that we discuss and pray about in Soul and Soul Virtual. So 4, 3, 2, and 1. Can't wait to see you there.
Lovely. So we look forward to welcoming all of you and your colleagues to the Caribbean Conference in July next year in Guyana. I wish now to invite Dr. Joy Wilson, who is a Lausanne Caribbean team member based in Guyana and very active in the planning of the missions conference. Dr. Wilson, a warm welcome to you.
Hello, Dr. Cook. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. I have a simple task to say thank you to everybody. But before I go there, why the conference? Why Guyana? Guyana now is it's one of the leading oil producers in the world and is in a positive place in terms of economic development. So for those interested in business, that would be a good reason to come to Guyana. Why this conference? What are we seeking to do? I want to use some quotes from our kind panelists today. Dr. Thompson pointed to the festering sore of disunity. I'm pleased to tell you that Lausanne, in seeking to take the whole gospel to the whole world, is seeking to resolve this issue of disunity. Our youth representative, Dario Richards, he pointed to the need for Christ-centered disciple making for the youth, as the youth needing that. Mr. Carell, he kindly pointed us that the global church needs to wake up to the cry of the next generation. And essentially, this is what the conference in Guyana in preparation for the one in 2024 is all about. If you just saw the video about, and our moderator, our gracious moderator, kindly just told us about the conference here in Guyana. And we look forward to seeing all of you. And we thank you for joining the, the webinar today. I want to thank Dr. O, the CEO of Lausanne, for greeting us, not just us seeing the video, but him gracing us with his presence. I thank each of the panelists, Dr. George, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Newman, Mr. Richards, Mr. Carell. I thank you so much. I thank Dr. Cook for so graciously moderating. I thank Mr. Graham Clark, who is the one behind the scenes, who has seen that all of this has happened. Our technical people, I thank you. And the rest of the Caribbean leadership team, I thank you so much for being a part of this, and we look forward to welcoming you in Guyana. Guyana is not just about Laverne Creek water. I hope you get some of that. But we have the lush Kaichor Falls, and I hope you get around to see our marketplace, to have some coconut water, but more that we focus on God's mission. I thank you. Thank you so much for joining. And we look forward to welcoming you in Guyana.
Thank you, Dr. Joy. Sorry, Dr. Wilson. Thank you. I guess you have a joyful look. So the last thing for me to say really is please do have a look at the Caribbean page of the Lausanne Movement website for upcoming information on the conference. Information will be placed on the website from early next year. And questions that we weren't able to answer today, we will also put those answers on the site. And some of those questions we will also bring into the Guyana next year. We really look forward to seeing you. So again, thank you for engaging with us today. Do enjoy the remainder of your day or your night. May God bless us all. Goodbye.